Hey guys, it's been a while. So, I came across this site my friend sent me. So, he sent me a link to the BuzzFeed website, and on this site, it contains very short stories with jinns. So, I'm going to be reading some of these stories. So, guys, please tune in and listen up. Okay, this first story is called The Fight. One time, my mother in law was sitting in her bed. She looked over and saw a woman sitting in the chair next to her, with long pointy fingers and a face with very sharp angles. She was so frustrated and annoyed with the jinns. They see a lot in their house and are no longer afraid, just really annoyed. That she reached out and grabbed the jinn by its wrist. She yelled, "Get out! I'm tired of you! Just get out!" It started to try pull its wrist away and eventually tried to bite her hand because she wouldn't let go. She pulled her hand away before it bit her. Then the jinn vanished. Number 2. The Jinn and the Locket. At my boarding school, we had a few cases of bullying. In one instance, there was a bully who broke the chain off a student's neck. As soon as that happened, the girl started to speak in a male voice while her body turned and moved into strange positions. It said it was a jinn and had travelled from a faraway place. Meanwhile, the bully who pulled the locket, her tongue swelled up and almost prevented her from breathing. Anyway, long story short, teachers were called into the room, and apparently her parents knew about this and had gotten the chain for the daughter from a shaman to hold the jinn in. Number 3. Communicating with children. This happened when my grandfather was Egypt's ambassador to Spain, and I was living in Spain. I was 2 years old at the time. My mother said she would see me standing by the staircase, constantly talking to someone when she would put me to bed. I would stare at the door and say, "Tick, tack, tick, tack." Later on, my grandmother mentioned to my mum that she thinks I might be seeing spirits in the house. When we were talking about it, my grandfather said that the TV in his room turns on and off, and sometimes could see shadows running across the balcony through the slits of the blinds. My grandmother said that it's known little children and animals can see spirits. So when they saw me talking to something, they assumed there were spirits in the house and I was the only one who could communicate with them. Story number 4. Hooves. This is a very common and old Persian story. One day, a lady goes to the public bathhouse. She pays the attendant and goes inside. Once inside, she notices someone in the room with her. She looks down at her feet, but instead of feet, this person has hooves. The lady freaks out and runs outside as fast as she can. She rushes to the attendant and tells her what she saw. "Someone with hooves instead of feet. Oh my God," she says to the attendant. The attendant looks at her, lifts up her skirt and asks her, "What? Like these?" Number 5. The Busybody. I grew up in an Arab household of many Arab friends and family, so I've heard many jinn stories. A family friend of mine claimed that she went to bed one night and her whole house was a mess. By the time she woke up, her whole house was clean. For some reason, that freaked me out. When I was little, every night I made sure that my room was clean so that jinns wouldn't clean it for me. Nowadays, being a wife and a full-time college student, I could only pray that the jinns would clean my house for me, and what the heck, even cook dinner as well. Number 6. Night whispers. A few years ago, when I was on my 3rd trimester of pregnancy, I would only be able to fall asleep when dawn came. Just as I was about to fall asleep one night, I felt pressure on the end of the bed, near my feet, as if someone very heavy sat on the bed, which was very weird because I didn't even hear anyone come into the room. No creaking door, no footsteps, nothing. Just then, an eerie voice spoke straight into my mind. The language was unintelligent and distorted. I knew it wasn't human, but to my surprise, I understood what it was trying to say. My brain processed it very easily. If I had learnt the language somewhere in the past, it asked me to pray my morning prayers. I was too sleepy and too scared to actually open my eyes. What if it was a face suddenly right in front of my nose? So I responded in my head, communicating without actually opening my mouth to say a word. Later, please. I'm so tired. I didn't get to sleep. After I said so, the weight on the end of my bed lifted. The air, which was previously heavy with presence, became light and clear. I opened my eyes a little and saw the earliest morning light glim through the window. My door stood still. No one came in or out. I fell back to sleep. Number 7. The landlord. So apparently in Saudi, my aunt lived in a house that was always being visited by a particular jinn, who used to annoy her family. Once she was laying in bed at night with her husband, she felt a bit odd and felt something was off. She would look towards him and feel an uncomfortable feeling. She stood up and left the room. She found her husband watching TV on the couch. When they went back into the bedroom to confront the jinn, it just laughed and then vanished. Number 8. The protector. Generations back, one of my forefathers taught Quran, the holy book, to a child from the jinn's family. This jinn child became a hafiz and memorized the Quran by heart. The jinn's parent, well, the parent jinn you could say, appeared in front of my grandfather, well, great-grandfather, and in return, as thanks, they offered him many different things. Gold, silver, whatever they brought in front of him. But he wouldn't accept it. He said, I did this because I believe I will be rewarded by Allah. They wouldn't go. The jinn said, you have done such a big favour to our generation that we want to give you something. After so many arguments, they wouldn't go. So my great-grandfather said, okay then, what I would ask you is that you have to take an oath, a promise. Promise me that for the next generation, well, the next 7 generations, you will not hurt anyone or make anyone's life miserable, even if it's their fault. You will keep this promise and not interfere. Number 9. Territorial jinn. My great uncle went to visit his cousins in India. His cousins told him that since it was summer, they would all sleep in the courtyard together. However, they told him he wasn't allowed to place his bedding in a particular corner. Apparently, a jinn slept there and strange things happened if anyone disturbs that corner. My great uncle said it was nonsense and decided to sleep there anyway. One night he woke up on the other side of the court. He laughed at first and thought it was one of his cousins who were pranking him and decided to sleep there again. The following night the same thing happened, so he left a note next to his pillow saying, stop pranking me. I know there is no jinn. That night he said he was pushed off his bed and his bedding was thrown on the other side. A note was thrown into his lap which said, I sleep here. The scary part is, it wasn't that dark and there was no one there. Number 10. Long limbs. My uncle once told me a story about a couple. The husband used to work in the force in Pakistan, so he would be sent on long trips outside the village. His wife was usually lonely, but she befriended a man. He would sit on her courtyard wall with his back facing her, so she could only see his face when he turned around to answer her back. It was a sweet friendship. One evening, she asked him to come over for tea and to bring his wife along with him. But instead of getting down off the wall and using the door, he took his leg, stretched it 10 feet down her wall to her side of the yard. He said, why didn't you offer me tea before? I'd love to come over and have chai with you. Number 11. The husband. My friend was staying in north of Morocco for the summer. One morning she woke up with a big triangle of henna on her hand. She showed it to everyone in her family, and they said the only valid reason this has happened was that she was married to a jinn now. She was never lucky in love ever since. Number 12. Never leaving home. Recently, my mother-in-law was helping her daughter move into her new home, and as my mother-in-law stood in the hall of the old one, she heard someone whisper in her ear, you think you can move and get rid of us? Guess what? We are coming too. You will never get rid of us. No one else ever heard what she heard in that hall that day. Number 13. The Laugher. My mother was visiting her parents. While she was praying in her room, she heard her mum laughing at her in the doorway. After she finished praying, she went to her mum's room and asked, "Mum, why were you laughing at me earlier?" My grandmother replied, "I've been in bed for a few hours now, love. I was laughing at you." My mum concluded, it must be that jinn tried to distract her from her prayers. You see, in the same house, you could hear footsteps walking throughout the house and might feel someone who sat on your bed while you're sleeping. I also used to have one in my bedroom. Every night around 3 a.m. I'd hear this old lady crying. We lived in the corner apartment on the top floor, and I couldn't find out from where it was coming from. I thought it was coming from under my bed. It got so bad I had to stop sleeping there. It got scary straight away.